My stepmom tried to kick me out of my family home? She didn't know I owned the house. I never liked my stepmom. She came into my life when I was 16, after my dad rushed into a marriage with a woman he barely knew. From day one, she made it clear that she saw me as an obstacle, just some annoying kid standing in the way of her perfect life with my dad. At first, I tried to keep the peace. I stayed out of her way, ignored the passive-aggressive comments, and let her pretend she was in charge of the house. My dad was wrapped around her finger, so no matter what she did, he always defended her. If she made a snide remark, he'd say I was overreacting. If she tried to change the house rules overnight, he'd say I needed to respect her as the woman of the house. It was exhausting. She wasn't outright abusive, but she was controlling and petty. She'd make backhanded comments about how I needed to grow up and stop acting so entitled. She'd move my things without asking, accidentally throw out my stuff if she thought it was clutter, and conveniently forget to set a place for me at the dinner table if she had friends over. I put up with it, until she tried to kick me out of my own house. That was the moment I realized this woman had no idea who she was dealing with. When my mom passed away, she left me everything, including the house we lived in. My dad didn't own it. He had signed a prenup when he married my mom, so when she passed, the house legally became mine. My dad was allowed to live there, of course, and I never even thought about kicking him out. He was still my father, after all. But the thing is, he never told my stepmom any of that. She thought the house was theirs. That when she married my dad, she somehow became the queen of the castle with full authority over everything inside it. She redecorated, threw out things that belonged to my mom, and even tried to turn my old bedroom into her yoga studio. I let a lot of things slide, just for the sake of avoiding unnecessary drama. But then, when I turned 18 and was still living at home while working and saving for college, she decided she wanted me gone. She sat me down one afternoon, smug as hell, and said, "I think it's time you learn to be independent. You can't just live here forever. Your father and I need our own space." I stared at her for a long moment, letting the words settle. She really thought she could kick me out of my own house? I could have told her right then, could have laughed in her face and let her know exactly how badly she just screwed up. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. And that's when I decided if she wanted to play games, I was about to show her exactly how badly she had just lost. I knew my dad would back her up. He always did. So I played along. I acted calm and reasonable, pretending to be the obedient stepdaughter she always wanted. I told her I completely understood and appreciated the time I had been able to stay there. She ate it up. "Oh, good," she said, visibly relieved. "I was worried you'd make this difficult." I asked her how long I had before I needed to leave. She pursed her lips, pretending to think about it before saying, "I think 2 weeks is fair. That gives you plenty of time to find somewhere new." Plenty of time? She really thought I could just magically afford rent, deposits, and moving costs in 2 weeks on my minimum wage job? But I nodded. "Thanks for giving me a heads up," I said. Then I walked away before she could see the grin creeping across my face. For the next few days, I started quietly gathering my paperwork. The deed to the house, my mother's will, everything that proved I was the legal owner. Then I started making plans. I didn't tell my dad right away. He had no backbone, and I knew if I told him before confronting my stepmom, he'd just warn her, and I wanted her to walk right into this trap without a clue. I also started acting differently, but just enough to throw her off. I stopped engaging in small talk, stopped eating dinner with them, stopped reacting when she made her little snide comments. I think she assumed I was hurt, that she had finally put me in my place. She had no idea I was about to drop a bomb on her entire world. The day before my deadline to move out, I sat my dad and stepmom down in the living room. She looked smug as hell, probably thinking she had won. I took out the house deed and set it on the table in front of them. "What's this?" she asked. I leaned back and crossed my arms. "The deed to my house?" She blinked. "What?" "My mom left it to me," I said casually. "She made sure my dad wouldn't have a claim to it, and when she passed, everything legally became mine." I watched as the color drained from her face. She turned to my dad, expecting him to deny it, but he just sat there, silent and guilty, because he knew, he had always known, and he had never told her. "So," I continued, dragging out the moment, "you aren't kicking me out. In fact, I think it's time you leave." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. This is some kind of joke, right?" I pulled out a printed eviction notice and slid it across the table. "No joke. You have 30 days to get out." She looked at my dad again, now completely panicked. "You can't just let her do this." My dad sighed, rubbing his face. "I told you not to push her." "You knew?" she shrieked. "Oh, this was better than I imagined." My stepmom went ballistic, screaming about how this was unfair, how I was ruining her life, how I was a selfish brat. But none of it mattered, because she was already out of chances. She had spent years treating me like I was nothing in my own home. Now, she was about to find out what it felt like to be the one who didn't belong. My stepmom sat there, frozen, her face a mix of shock, rage, and disbelief. She looked at the eviction notice in front of her, then back at my dad, as if she expected him to suddenly fix this for her. You can't do this, she stammered. This is my home too, I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, and raised an eyebrow. No, it's not. It's mine. And now, you have 29 days left to find somewhere else to live. She turned to my dad, eyes wild with panic. Tell her this is insane. This is your house too. My dad sighed, rubbing his forehead like he had a massive headache. It's not, honey, he mumbled. The house has always been in her name. I never had a claim to it. The silence that followed was delicious. For the first time since she moved in, my stepmom looked genuinely powerless. She opened her mouth to argue again, but what could she say? She had just spent the last few weeks acting like she was the queen of the house, treating me like a burden, and smugly telling me to leave. And now, she was the one getting kicked out. For the first few days after that conversation, my stepmom refused to accept reality. She started acting like nothing had happened, as if ignoring the situation would somehow make it go away. She still cooked dinner, still tried to act like the lady of the house, still gave me dirty looks in the hallway, like I was the one being unreasonable. But every time she walked past me, I just smiled sweetly and reminded her, 28 days left. Then she tried to negotiate. One morning, she sat me down at the kitchen table and put on her best motherly voice, the one she only used when she wanted something. Sweetheart, she began, forcing a smile. I know we've had our differences, but we should really try to work this out as a family. I tilted my head. You mean like how you tried to work it out by kicking me out of my own house? She winced, but quickly recovered. That was a mistake, she said. I was just thinking about what was best for everyone, but now that I know the situation, we don't have to make any rash decision. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. Oh, I agree. That's why I gave you 30 days instead of just calling the sheriff to drag you out. Her smile faltered. But, where would we go? Not my problem, I said, shrugging. She stared at me dumbfounded, like she couldn't believe I was actually following through. And that's when I realized she still thought she had leverage. She still thought she could guilt me into letting her stay. She was so wrong. When she realized I wasn't going to budge, she switched tactics. She started working on my dad. I'd hear them arguing late at night, her voice hissing through the walls. You need to fix this. She's your daughter. Make her stop. What do you want me to do? It's her house. She's just doing this to punish me. You need to stand up for us. But my dad, for the first time in years, actually grew a spine. One night, after another one of their arguments, he knocked on my bedroom door. Can we talk? He asked. I put my book down and nodded. What's up? He sighed, looking exhausted. She's freaking out. She wants me to beg you to let her stay. I didn't say anything. I just waited. He rubbed his face. I'm not going to. She did this to herself. That caught me off guard. I had been so sure he would try to convince me to change my mind, but instead he just sat down on the edge of my bed and let out a long breath. Honestly, I don't even know if I want to stay with her after this. I blinked. Wait, what? He looked up at me, his face tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. I knew she could be selfish, but I didn't think she'd go this far. I let her push you around because I didn't want to fight, but I should have stood up for you. That was the first real apology I had ever heard from him. I didn't forgive him immediately. I wasn't ready for that. But for the first time in years, I actually saw a glimpse of the dad I used to look up to. She's leaving in 3 weeks, I said simply. You don't have to go with her. He nodded, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Then he sighed. I'll think about it. Over the next couple of weeks, my stepmom spiraled. She begged, she guilt-tripped, she tried to turn my dad against me. She even tried calling her family to pressure me. None of it worked. Every time she pulled something, I'd just remind her, 14 days left, then 10, then 7. And with each passing day, she got more desperate. The day before she was supposed to leave, I came home from work to find her sobbing on the couch, suitcases piled by the door. She looked up at me, eyes red and puffy. I have nowhere to go, she whispered. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge, completely unbothered. Sounds rough, I said, taking a sip. She just stared at me, like she couldn't believe I was actually letting this happen. But I didn't feel bad, not even a little, because this wasn't some unfair punishment. This was justice. She spent years making me feel like an outsider in my own home. Now, she was finally experiencing what that felt like. The next morning, she tried one last stunt. She told my dad she was refusing to leave, that if I wanted her out, I'd have to physically remove her. I smiled. Because I had already called the sheriff's office ahead of time and arranged for an officer to be present if needed. The moment she realized I was actually prepared to have her dragged out, she grabbed her bags and stormed out the front door, cursing me the entire way. And my dad? He didn't follow her. He stood on the porch watching as she drove away and let out a long breath. "Well," he said, "that was a disaster." I grinned. "Yeah, but a satisfying one. For the first time since she moved in, my house finally felt like home again, and I had never felt freer. The silence in the house after my stepmom left was almost eerie, but in the best way possible. For the first time in years, I could walk into my kitchen without seeing her judgmental eyes scanning my every move. I could leave my things where I wanted without worrying that she'd accidentally throw them away. The air felt lighter, like the whole house had been suffocating under her presence, and now it could finally breathe again. I half expected my dad to be miserable, but to my surprise, he wasn't. He wasn't exactly cheerful, but there was a sense of relief in the way he moved, like a man who had finally escaped a burden he didn't even realize he had been carrying. At first, I didn't want to ask too many questions. I figured he needed time to process everything. But a week after she left, we sat down for dinner, just the two of us, and I finally asked him the question that had been lingering in my mind. "Do you regret letting her go?" He didn't answer right away. He took a sip of his drink, set it down, and let out a deep breath. "I regret not seeing her for who she was sooner," he admitted. "I spent so much time trying to keep the peace that I didn't realize I was letting her walk all over both of us." I wasn't expecting that level of honesty from him. For so long he had acted like I was the problem, like I needed to just accept that she was in charge. But now? Now he saw everything clearly. "I don't blame you for anything," I said, "but I'm glad she's gone." He chuckled. "Yeah, me too." And just like that, it felt like a weight had been lifted between us. Now, at this point, I thought I was done with my stepmom. She was gone, out of my house, out of my life. That should have been enough, right? Apparently, karma wasn't done with her yet. A few weeks after she left, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was short, and it reeked of desperation. "I need to talk to you, please." I stared at the message for a solid minute before typing back. "Who is this?" A moment later, my phone buzzed again. It's, "Please, I just need a minute." I almost laughed out loud. What the hell could she possibly want? I debated not answering at all. I owed her nothing. But curiosity got the best of me, so I texted back, "What do you want?" Her response came fast. "I just need a place to stay for a little while. I wouldn't even be in your way, just a couple of weeks until I get back on my feet." I actually had to set my phone down for a second because I was laughing too hard. She really thought that after everything, I'd let her move back into my house? The same house she tried to kick me out of? I didn't even bother being polite. Absolutely not. She sent a long message about how she had nowhere else to go, how my dad had abandoned her, and she had no savings because she didn't think she'd ever need one. Yeah, that wasn't my problem, so I sent one final text. "You made your bed, now lie in it." And then? I blocked her number. I found out later, through a mutual acquaintance, that after she left my house, she had bounced around from couch to couch, burned bridges with friends, and eventually ended up living in a crappy motel. Apparently, she had been so sure that my dad would fight for her that he would beg me to let her stay. When he didn't, she was completely unprepared. She tried getting alimony from him, but since they had only been married a few years and she had never contributed financially, the court laughed her out of the room. She had spent years treating me like I was nothing in a house that never belonged to her. And now, she had nothing. Meanwhile, my dad and I were finally repairing our relationship, and our home was finally at peace, and I had never felt happier. After I blocked my stepmom, I thought that was the end of it. She was out of my house, out of my life, and I was finally free from the constant stress of dealing with her fake authority and manipulative tactics. But, of course, people like her never go down quietly. Even after she was homeless and alone, she still tried to weasel her way back into my life, or rather, my house. She didn't just text me, she tried to get other people involved. The last-second guilt trip attempt. About a month after she left, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually don't answer those, but for some reason I did this time. The second I picked up, I knew exactly who it was. "Hey, it's me," she said, in a voice that was too soft, too pitiful. A complete 180 from the arrogant, controlling woman I had lived with for years. I sighed. "Why are you calling me?" She let out a shaky breath, as if she were about to cry. I know I messed up. I know I wasn't fair to you. But I don't have anywhere to go." I rolled my eyes so hard they nearly got stuck. "You mean to tell me," I said, "that after treating me like crap, trying to throw me out of my own house, and acting like you owned everything, you expect me to feel bad for you now?" She sniffled. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I just wanted a fresh start with your father, and I thought—" I cut her off. "Yeah, you thought you could push me around and take control of something that was never yours, and now that you lost, you suddenly want my sympathy?" "I'm not asking for much," she insisted. "Just a place to stay for a few weeks. Maybe even just a couch." I laughed, a full unbothered laugh. "Oh, you mean like how I just needed a little more time before moving out and you told me it was time to be independent?" She was silent, so I kept going. "I remember you saying that I can't just live here forever, that you and my dad needed space." I made a thoughtful sound. "Oh, wait. That's right. You're not with my dad anymore." That was when her fake sadness cracked, and I heard her frustration creep into her voice. "Do you really have to be so cruel about this?" she snapped. "Oh, you mean like how you were cruel to me for years?" I shot back. "Yeah, actually I do." She started saying something else, but I hung up and blocked her again. When she realized I wasn't going to cave, she did what every manipulative person does. She tried to get to me through someone else. And who better to try than my dad? One night, he and I were having dinner, when his phone buzzed. He chucked it, sighed, and put it face down on the table. "Her again?" I asked. He nodded. "She wants to talk?" I raised an eyebrow. "You're not actually considering it, are you?" He let out a humorless laugh. "Not a chance. I learned my lesson." I watched him for a moment, the man who had once blindly defended her, who had ignored how she treated me, who had acted like I was the problem. He was completely done with her now. I smiled. "Good, because I don't think she's ever going to stop trying to worm her way back in." "Let her try," he said, shaking his head. "She's never getting back in here." A few months later, I got the most satisfying update ever. A mutual acquaintance, who still kept up with people from my stepmom's old life, sent me a screenshot of something that nearly made me choke on my coffee. She had started a GoFundMe. The title? "Help Me Rebuild My Life After Devastating Hardship." I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. She had written this long, dramatic sob story about how she had lost her home, her husband, and everything she worked for. How she had been wronged by people she trusted, and how she was just trying to get back on her feet. Of course, she left out the part where she tried to evict her stepdaughter from a house that was never hers. But the best part? Her fundraiser had been up for weeks, and she had raised a grand total of $10. I actually had to wipe tears from my eyes from laughing so hard. Turns out people weren't buying her sob story. Everyone who had once believed in her charm and lies had finally seen her for what she was, a selfish, manipulative woman who burned every bridge she had. After she was officially out of my life, things finally felt normal again. My dad and I actually had a relationship now, one that wasn't strained by his wife constantly pitting us against each other. The house? It was finally mine in every sense of the word. No more rearranged furniture, no more missing personal belongings, no more walking on eggshells in my own home. And my stepmom? The last I heard, she was bouncing from couch to couch, still hoping someone would pity her enough to take her in. But the thing is, she never showed any pity when she thought she had power over me. She never thought twice about trying to push me out of my own home, because in her mind, I was just some inconvenience standing in the way of her perfect little life. She thought she was going to win. She thought she was going to erase me from the home my mother left me. But in the end, she was the one who lost everything, and I never looked back.